It started out like any other week. I was in the hospital, hooked up to machines, feeling every beep and whir echoing in my head. Honestly, I was just worried about getting better, about the pain in my chest and the endless mountain of bills piling up. My wife, Lisa, was supposed to be at work. She was always good about sticking to her schedule, so I didn't think much when she said she'd be working late those days. I was half out of it, drifting between painkillers and the restless sleep they gave me. But then I came home yesterday and everything felt off. It was quiet in a way that made my skin crawl. I mean, Lisa was never loud, but this silence was the kind that presses in around your ears like a warning. I walked in, kicked off my shoes, and immediately noticed the faint scent of perfume I didn't recognize. Not just a little, but enough to make me pause. My stomach twisted up, and I felt the heat rising in my cheeks. I looked around the living room. Nothing seemed out of place at first. Then I saw the small, crumpled note on the kitchen counter. My heart thumped so loud I could feel it in my ears. It read, "Be back late, love you." It was from Lisa. But then I noticed her phone face down sitting on the table. That struck me as odd. She always kept her phone closed, especially with her work emails. I hesitated, then reached for it. The screen lit up with notifications, and I saw a message from someone named Jake. We don't have anyone named Jake in our lives. Just the name made my stomach turn cold. I hesitated, then unlocked her phone. The message was direct, casual, and about plans for tonight. "Can't wait to see you, babe. Just a quick dinner, then maybe a movie." The words hit me like a sledgehammer. My hands went numb. My mind spun. It wasn't just a friendly chat. It was something more, and I could feel the betrayal burning through my veins. My wife, my partner, had been lying to me all week, lying about being at work while she was with him. The image of her lips on someone else's neck, her hand in his, flashed through my mind and made my gut clench so sharply that I almost doubled over. I needed to see more. I scrolled through her messages and a flood of texts poured in. There were pictures, one of her smiling with a guy I'd never seen before, holding hands. Another message was a flirty, "Can't wait to see you tonight, missed you today." My mind rattled. How long had this been going on? Had I been blind? Or just too damn stupid to see the signs? I felt my jaw tighten, my fists clench so hard the nails cut into my palms. I wanted to scream, to shake her awake and demand explanations, but I also knew I had to keep my composure. I had a plan forming. A part of me wanted to confront her right then and there, but I knew I had to be smart. If I reacted too quickly, I might lose any chance of catching her in the act. I stared at her phone, feeling the cold weight of betrayal settle in my chest. The betrayal wasn't just in the messages. It was in her face, her voice, the way she swore she loved me while she was out sneaking around. I remembered her lying to my face last week when I asked if she'd been working late. "Yes, honey, just working," she said softly, her eyes avoiding mine. Now I knew the truth. She'd been lying from the start. I clenched my jaw even harder and took a deep breath. I had to think. How could I make her pay? How could I make her see that I wasn't just some fool she could string along? My mind raced, and then I remembered something I'd read once. Revenge is a dish best served cold. I didn't want to just walk away. I wanted her to feel what I felt, the sting of betrayal, the sense of being completely shattered. I wanted her to know that I knew, and I was not going to let her get away with it, not this time. If she thought I was naive, she was dead wrong. My eyes fell on her purse sitting on the counter. I knew I shouldn't, but I reached for it. I needed proof. I needed to see if she'd left anything behind, something to remind her of what she'd done. The purse was heavy, and inside I found something that made my stomach turn even more, a condom wrapper. One I didn't recognize. That was the final nail in the coffin. I felt my knees weaken and I sat down hard on the chair. All the anger, hurt, and betrayal surged through me. I knew I had to act, but I also knew I needed to be careful. I couldn't just lash out. I had to plan to make sure she paid, but without losing myself in the process. I looked at her phone again, then at the shower I was supposed to take. I had a choice. Do I confront her now, or do I wait and see if she slips up even more? I decided I'd wait. For now, I'd keep everything quiet. I'd let her think she's safe. But I knew deep down that this was just the beginning, and she had no idea what she'd just set in motion. I spent the night tossing and turning, the images of her with him flickering in my mind like a bad movie I couldn't shut off. My stomach was tight, almost like a knot I couldn't untie. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her smile, that innocent look she always wore, and then I'd remember the texts, the pictures, the condom wrapper, proof of her betrayal. I kept replaying that moment, feeling the anger bubble just under my skin, threatening to boil over. This wasn't just heartbreak. It was rage, pure, unfiltered rage. I felt betrayed, yes, but more than that, disgusted. Disgusted with her, with myself for not seeing it sooner. But mostly I was furious that she'd played me so easily, so convincingly. Like I was some fool who didn't notice the signs. Well, I'd made a vow to myself that I wasn't going down without a fight. Morning came quickly. The sun filtered weakly through the blinds, casting a dull glow over everything. I sat in the kitchen sipping coffee that tasted bitter and cold, just like the truth I'd uncovered. I knew what I had to do. I had to get revenge, but I needed a plan that would leave her stunned, broken, and maybe, just maybe, make her regret what she'd done. First, I wanted to gather more evidence. I remembered she'd left her phone on the table. I grabbed it again, knowing I had to act fast before she realized I'd been snooping. I could feel my palms sweat as I unlocked it again, scrolling through her messages. I knew she'd be cautious, so I looked for recent activity, something she might have missed or overlooked. One message caught my eye, an exchange with the same guy, Jake. They were planning to meet again tonight. She'd mentioned getting away for a bit, as if this was some innocent secret. But I knew better now. This was his way of saying goodbye, or maybe saying hello to her whenever she had the chance. I felt the familiar heat of betrayal rising up again, but I kept my hand steady. I couldn't let her see what I was feeling, not yet. I decided that I'd wait for her to come home this evening and I'd be ready. But I wasn't going in blind. I knew I had to set a trap, something that would expose her to everyone, especially herself. I'd been reading up on revenge strategies, nothing violent, just clever, calculated. I wanted her to see what she lost, and I wanted her to know she'd been caught. I began planning my move. I knew her routines well enough now. She'd be coming back around 7 or 8 tonight, probably expecting things to be normal. I planned to leave her a gift, something that would make her realize she'd crossed a line she couldn't come back from. I'd also print out some of her messages and leave them somewhere she'd find them. That way, she'd see the evidence myself, face to face. The core of my plan was simple. When she walked in, I'd be waiting. I'd confront her calmly with the evidence in hand. I wouldn't shout or scream, not yet. Instead, I'd let her squirm, let her see how thoroughly she'd been caught. I'd tell her I knew everything about Jake, about the messages, about her secret meetings. And I'd give her a choice, come clean or face the fallout. But I wanted more than just confrontation. I wanted her to feel the sting of betrayal, exactly what I'd felt all night. So I decided I'd also do something a little sneaky. I found her favorite perfume, something she always wore when she went out. I'd spray a little in her purse so she'd think I'd been snooping through her stuff. I'd leave the condom wrapper on top of her pillow so she'd see it first thing. Small things, but enough to make her realize I'd been in her world, in her space, and I knew every detail. I also planned to call her bluff. When she got home, I'd ask her outright if she'd been unfaithful. I'd look her in the eyes and see if she'd crack. If she lied again, I had everything I needed. I'd have her trapped, exposed, and cornered. That was the goal, make her see that she couldn't hide behind her lies anymore. As I finished setting my traps, I felt a strange calm come over me. Like this was the first step out of the darkness she dragged me into. I was done being the naive husband, done trusting blindly. This was about reclaiming myself, about showing her that her betrayal wasn't just going to slide past unnoticed. I was going to make her regret it in ways she wouldn't see coming. The house was quiet now, except for the ticking clock and the distant hum of the city waking up. I could still feel my stomach tighten, but I knew I had to stay sharp. Tonight would be the moment I finally confronted her, face to face, and laid everything bare. She'd think I was naive or maybe even too hurt to act, but I was already planning to turn the tables, and when she walked through that door, I'd be ready. The hours dragged on, each minute feeling like an eternity. I kept glancing at the clock, nerves prickling my skin. My mind kept circling back to what I'd uncovered, the texts, the pictures, the condom wrapper. Each detail was a dagger stabbing deeper with every passing second. I'd never felt so exposed, so betrayed. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I knew what I had to do and I was going to see it through. Around 7:45 p.m. I heard her key turn in the lock. My stomach twisted, part anticipation, part dread. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I looked around, pretending I was just relaxing, trying to act normal. She came in quietly, almost like she didn't notice me sitting on the couch. She looked different, more nervous than usual maybe. Her eyes darted around, her hands fidgeted with her purse. I could see the faint shimmer of her perfume lingering on her skin. "Hey," she said softly, trying to sound casual. "Did you wait up for me?" I looked at her, feeling the weight of everything I'd planned. My voice was calm but firm. "Actually, Lisa, I found your phone this morning. I saw the messages, the ones with Jake, the ones where you said you missed him. I think you owe me some explanations." Her eyes widened, her face flickering with panic for just a second. Then she tried to regain her composure. "It's nothing," she said quickly. "Just some stupid flirtation. It meant nothing." I shook my head slowly, holding up her phone. "It meant everything to me. You lied about working late. You lied about being at work when you were with him. I found the condom wrapper in your purse. I want the truth now, Lisa. Are you cheating on me?" She looked like she'd been hit. Her mouth opened, then shut again. "It's not what it looks like," she whispered. "It was just a mistake. I didn't think you'd find out." I clenched my fists. The anger was boiling, but I kept my voice steady. "A mistake? You think cheating on your husband is just a mistake? That's bullshit. Do you even feel guilty? Or do you just not care about how much? You hurt me." She looked down, tears welling in her eyes. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I swear I love you. I was just feeling lost and he was there. It didn't mean anything." I shook my head again, disgusted. "Love, if you loved me, you wouldn't do this. I gave you everything, my trust, my life, and you threw it away for a quick thrill." She tried to speak but couldn't. Her shoulders shook with silent tears. I felt the cold fury inside me rising like a tidal wave. I decided I wouldn't lose my temper just yet. Instead, I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small box. I handed it to her. "What's this?" she asked, voice trembling. "Open it," I said quietly. She hesitated, then peeled back the tissue paper. Inside was the printed copies of her messages, the pictures, everything I'd found. Her eyes widened in horror. "You went through my phone." "You bet I did. I wanted to see what kind of person I've been married to all these years. Turns out," I paused for effect, "you've been lying to my face, and I'm done." She stared at the evidence, then looked back at me, voice cracking. "Please don't do this. I didn't mean for it to happen. I was stupid. I thought I could keep it secret and it just got out of control." I felt the last of my restraint slipping away. "No more secrets, Lisa. I want you to leave. Pack your things and go. I don't want to see you again until you're ready to tell me the truth and apologize for what you've done." Her hands trembled as she grabbed her purse. "Where will I go?" "Anywhere but here," I said coldly. "And I want the keys to your car. I don't want you coming back, not today, not ever, unless it's to give me the divorce papers." She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. "Please don't do this. I love you. I swear I do." That was the moment. I reached out, took her hand, and gently but firmly removed her keys. "It's over, Lisa. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." She looked at me one last time, her face a mixture of guilt and sadness. Then she turned and left, slamming the door behind her. I stood there watching her go, feeling a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. As I closed the door, I knew this was the beginning of something new. She'd betrayed me, but I'd also taken back control. I'd finally shattered the illusion that I was naive or helpless. Now, I had to pick up the pieces, but I also knew I'd never trust her again. And honestly, it felt damn good to take that first step toward reclaiming myself. The house felt different the moment she left. Quiet, almost too quiet, like the walls were holding their breath. For a few moments I just stood there, staring at the doorway she just walked out of, feeling the weight of her betrayal press down on my chest. The adrenaline had worn off, leaving me with a hollow ache that made my stomach churn. I'd done what needed to be done, but it left me feeling raw, exposed in ways I hadn't anticipated. I took a deep breath and looked around the living room. Everything was still in its place, but now it seemed somehow emptier. The evidence I'd left lying on the coffee table, the printed messages, the photos, felt like trophies, proof of her lies. Part of me wanted to rip them apart, erase everything, but I knew that wasn't the answer. I needed to see this through, to face the consequences of her actions and my decisions. I sat down on the couch, my mind racing. 1,000 thoughts flooded my head: anger, sadness, betrayal. But beneath it all, a small voice kept reminding me that I'd taken control. For so long I had let her manipulate my trust, but now I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. I was done playing the victim. I was going to take back my life. My phone buzzed on the table, jolting me out of my thoughts. It was a message from an unknown number. I hesitated, then picked it up, breathing deeply before I unlocked it. The message was simple: "You win, but this isn't over." That sent a shiver down my spine. I knew that meant she was planning something, or maybe just trying to scare me. Either way, I'd prepared for this. I'd always known she was stubborn, and now she was showing her true colors: desperate and reckless. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I'd made my move, and whatever came next, I'd be ready. A sudden urge to reclaim some control pushed me to action. I decided I'd call a lawyer tomorrow, start the divorce process. This wasn't just about ending the marriage. It was about reclaiming my dignity. I'd also change my locks, cancel her credit cards, and make sure she couldn't come back without my permission. I'd spent years building this life, and I wasn't going to let her tear it apart with her lies anymore. But more than anything, I needed to clear my head. I got up, walked into the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water. The cool liquid helped steady my nerves, though the ache in my chest remained. I looked out the window at the darkening sky, the city's distant hum filling the silence. I reflected on everything: how I'd been so blind, how her words used to feel like truths. I remember the way she used to look at me, so loving, so devoted. And now I saw the truth: her love had been a lie, all of it just a mask to hide her secret. I clenched my fists so tight my nails dug into my palms. I knew I had to move on, but part of me still burned with anger. I wanted her to know somehow that I wasn't the fool she thought I was, that they couldn't just cheat and walk away without consequences. That's when I realized I wasn't just going to let her go quietly. No, I'd make sure she felt the weight of what she'd done. I also thought about the future, how I'd rebuild myself from this rubble. I'd start with some fresh boundaries: no more blindly trusting, no more excuses. My dignity had been poked, my heart broken, but I was still standing. Stronger, maybe, or at least determined. Somewhere deep down, I felt a flicker of something else: revenge. Not destructive, not violent, just enough to make her realize she'd lost something she'd taken for granted. I promised myself that I'd set things in motion, quietly and carefully, so that she'd see the consequences without me having to say a word. I'd make her realize that betrayal comes with a price. I looked at the clock again, realizing it was late. Tomorrow would be a new day, but tonight I'd just sit here and breathe. Make sense of what had happened, plan my next steps. I'd already decided I wasn't going to chase her or beg her to stay. That part of my life was over. Now I'd focus on myself, on healing, on reclaiming my strength. The house was silent, but inside me a storm was settling. I knew this was only the beginning of the next chapter, and I was ready to face it without her. With every breath, I felt a little more free. With every heartbeat, I was closer to closing this painful chapter and starting anew. My next step was clear. I'd call the lawyer first thing in the morning, and from there, I'd take control of everything. I didn't want her to think she could walk away scot-free. She'd betrayed my trust, yes, but I was going to make sure she paid a price, one way or another. And once I did, I'd move on, knowing I'd finally taken back my life. The morning came faster than I wanted, but I was already awake, minds racing, nerves on edge. I knew what I had to do. No more waiting, no more second-guessing. I pulled out my phone and dialed the lawyer I'd found last week, an old friend of a friend who handled divorces. The line rang a few times before he picked up, his voice sounding like he'd been expecting my call. "Hey, it's me. I need to start the process. Fast," I said, my voice steady but low, like I was barely holding myself together. "Okay," he replied without hesitation. "Do you want to serve her today or wait?" "Today. I want everything done quietly, and I want her out as soon as possible. No mess, no fuss, just dissolve this thing. I paused, feeling the weight lift slightly with each word. I want her keys, her car, her stuff, everything. I want her to know she's lost her access, her trust, her marriage. He agreed, then asked, any particular reason you want this rushed? Let's just say I've had enough surprises for 1 week, I said flatly. And I want to take control before she tries to turn this around on me. I hung up, feeling a strange sense of relief. I was finally taking back the power she'd tried to steal. I knew I had to prepare myself for whatever she might do next, but I was ready. I'd spent sleepless nights planning, and now it was time to execute. Next, I drove to her place. I knew she'd be home soon, probably trying to figure out what was happening. I had already made a decision about what to do once I got there. The house was quiet, the familiar scent of her perfume lingering in the air. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. I grabbed her keys from the hook by the door, then moved to her purse. Inside, I found the small box I'd left yesterday, proof she couldn't deny. I took her keys, then carefully slipped the printed messages and photos into a folder I brought along. I wanted her to see everything all at once, so there was no denying the truth. I knocked on the door, then stepped inside. As she opened it, her eyes wide with surprise. Her face immediately shifted from confusion to panic. I see you've been busy, she managed to say, voice trembling. Yeah, I said, holding up the folder. I think you know what this is. I've had enough of hiding your lies. I kept my tone cold but controlled. We're done. I've started the divorce process, and I want you out of my house today. She looked like she was about to cry, but I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. Don't even try, I warned. I've had enough of your bullshit. I want you to pack your things and leave, and don't come back. Her lips trembled, but she nodded slowly. Fine, I'll leave, but you'll regret this. Maybe, I said, but I doubt it. I handed her the folder. Here, everything you tried to hide. Don't come back, Lisa, not unless it's the divorce papers. She snatched the folder, clutching it like a weapon, then silently turned and started packing. I watched her, feeling a strange mixture of satisfaction and emptiness. I'd finally taken control, but I knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a new chapter, one I was determined to write on my own terms. As she left, I locked the door behind her and took a deep breath. I was free from her lies, her betrayal. I'd suffered enough, and now it was time to heal. I had the legal stuff to finalize, the keys to hand over, and a future waiting to be built. Walking back into the house, I felt a strange calm settle over me. I could finally breathe again. I'd proved I wasn't helpless, that I could stand up and reclaim what was mine. The betrayal still stung, but I was stronger than ever. And I knew I'd come out of this not just intact, but better. My final step was clear. I packed her remaining things into a box, set the keys on the table, and made a call to the lawyer to confirm everything was filed. When I hung up, I looked around the house one last time. Everything was in its right place now, just me, my home, and a future I was finally starting to see clearly. I realized then that betrayal cuts deep, but it also reveals who you really are. And I knew I'd be fine. I'd rebuild, I'd recover, and I'd come out stronger than I ever imagined. The pain had been real, but my resolve was even stronger. The house felt eerily quiet now, but for the first time in days I felt sense of closure. The weight of betrayal, the sleepless nights, the endless questions, all of it was finally behind me. I sat alone in the living room, staring at the empty space where she had been just hours ago. The silence was deafening, yet strangely peaceful. I realized I'd spent so long trying to protect myself from the pain, from the truth, that I hadn't allowed myself to feel the relief that was finally settling in. I looked at the keys on the table, her keys, my keys, and slid them into my pocket. No more waiting, no more hiding. I had taken control of every aspect I could, and now I was ready to start healing. I packed the remaining of her things into a box, placing it on the porch. I didn't want to keep anything that reminded me of her betrayal. That chapter was closed. I also made a point to write a note, just a simple one. This is over. Don't come back. It felt cruel in a way, but it was honest. I needed her to understand that there was no chance of reconciliation, no more lies, no more pretending. I was done with her games. I wanted to move forward without the weight of her deception dragging me down. As I sat back, feeling a strange mixture of exhaustion and relief, I reflected on everything that had led up to this moment. Looking back, I saw the signs, The subtle hints I ignored, the small red flags I brushed off. I remembered the nights I thought she was working late, the little excuses she gave, the way she avoided my questions. I'd been blind to it for so long, but now I saw everything clearly. I thought about the pain she caused, the trust she shattered, but I also thought about my own resilience, how I'd managed to turn this terrible betrayal into a catalyst for change. I'd taken back my dignity. I'd shown her that I was not a fool. I'd stood up, faced her, and walked away with my head high. The truth was, I didn't want revenge just to hurt her. That wasn't my style. I wanted her to realize what she'd lost, what she threw away for some fleeting moment of pleasure. I wanted her to see that her actions had consequences, that she couldn't just cheat and walk free. And I'd done that. I'd made her face herself in the mirror, see the destruction she'd brought upon herself. Now I was focused on rebuilding. I scheduled a few days off work to give myself space. I needed to breathe, to process, to heal. I knew it wouldn't be easy. The pain wouldn't disappear overnight. But I also knew I'd come out of this stronger than I was before. I'd learned to trust myself again, to rebuild my confidence and my sense of worth. As I looked out the window, the sunset cast a warm glow over the empty street. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, a reminder that even after darkness, light returns. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool evening air fill my lungs. It was a new start, a blank page. I was finally free from the chaos, from the lies, from her betrayal. I stood up, grabbed the box of her things, and carried it to the trash can. As I watched her belongings disappear into the black bag, I felt a strange sense of liberation. I had faced the storm and I had survived. I had confronted the darkness and I was finally stepping into the light. The final lesson I took from all of this came with clarity. Betrayal cuts deep, but it also reveals your true strength. Sometimes you have to hit rock bottom to realize how resilient you really are. I may have been shattered, but I refused to stay broken. I chose to walk away, rebuild, and move on better, wiser, and more cautious. That's what I want everyone to remember. No matter how dark things seem, there's always a way forward. You just have to be brave enough to take it.